Hey everyone. I'd like to just quickly reflect again. Thank you so much, Marla Jan, for your talk. I mean, when we spoke on the phone about it, I know that you attended this event last year, and it was something where we had looked to see, if there was an opportunity to talk this year. And just thank you so much. I mean, it's never easy to share your experience, especially around something as personal as that. But thank you so much. So with that, we'll transition to David Leventhal, who's going to be talking about providing closure to participants in clinical research, and not just closure, but a meaningful one. So just some brief background on David. David is Senior Director of Clinical Trial Experience at Pfizer. He is responsible for the external engagement and clinical trial participant experience activities within the Global Product Development Division. Within this role, he is responsible for developing innovative approaches to address vital patient engagement challenges. His efforts span the entire patient journey, from before an individual might consider participation in a trial, their experience during a trial, and after they have completed their participation. David has been with Pfizer for 25 years. This week marks the 25th anniversary that he joined Pfizer. And in that time, he has served in a variety of R&D and innovation functions, including program management, business portfolio management, and clinical trial operations. So, David, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be a part of the event. We're really looking forward to your perspective, and I'll give you the stage.
Well, thank you, Doug. Thank you all for coming. I'd like to thank Catherine for hosting, and all the colleagues at BMS, some of whom I work closely with on this kind of work, as collaborating as an industry. Let me just share my content. Well, I hope everyone is seeing my main slide, and with that, I will. I think the first thing before we can talk about how we close out a clinical trial is, what is the clinical trial journey anyway, in terms of how we see it at Pfizer. I think part of what we needed to do as a company is we needed to listen first. We needed to listen to our stakeholders and find out what they were feeling and thinking about clinical trial participation, both as participants, participant patients, as well as investigators and their staff. And so the listening, we heard, from patients, are they going to be wasting their time doing this work? And what do we need to do in terms of setting up principles around how we create a sustainable experience for participants? I think we found we need to deliver value for their time and effort, and to answer this question for them. They're also asking, they're not always sure whether or not they're being truly cared for. I think what we understood that to mean as a pillar is we needed to create a mutually respectful dynamic for clinical trial participants, and to ensure that was felt by them, and create a sense of humanity in everything that they were experiencing. For study coordinators and sponsors, study coordinators and investigators, I think, they've said, sponsors think they have nothing but time to give. Anytime we make things harder for them, it just is impossible then to do their jobs. And so we heard that, and, part of this experience is going the extra mile to ensure that we're creating a quality interaction with our partners. And we're asking people to do something for us, and any friction that we put into the system is not going to be appreciated. And investigators said that the best sponsors that they've worked with were organized, that the trials were well structured, and that we created a sense of team, and that we were just not throwing things over the wall and expecting them to just sort of serve at the behest of a clinical team. And so fostering a sense of team was one of our key pillars. And that, clinical research is a team sport, as I like to say. And, we've had to create a common connection to make sure that we're motivating everyone to be part of this enterprise. So these are our principles, and this is what undergirds everything that we're doing at Pfizer around creating good experience for everyone that's involved. But to really create a map of what that actually means, we had to go from a series of what are really discrete steps and interactions, transactions in many ways, to an emotional journey that every one of these participants is part of. And so we needed to map out what those critical moments were for the patients, for sites, for sponsors, and to make sure that we were acknowledging the emotional ups and downs that come with that work. So I have here an example of what our emotional journey is, and for all of the stakeholders, and from making a decision to become an investigator to selecting sites, setting up trials at those sites, how we create awareness in the patient community, how we recruit and screen in our clinical trials, the day-to-day activities, patient participation, and how we close out the trial, which is what I'll be talking about. So the things that that we focus on as a team in clinical trial experience are ensuring that every protocol considers every aspect of this trial experience, that we're getting sites up and running faster, that we're improving the participant experience, and that it's a learning experience for them, and one where questions are being answered, that we're onboarding our sites and participants more effectively, that we're setting up those participants for success by giving them the tools that they need, improving the day-to-day experience of the study coordinator, and providing thoughtful closure when the study comes to an end. And this is where I'll be getting into some additional detail. I apologize for the extended throat clearing, but I think this all needed to be put into context of a very large body of work that's taking place. But I'll be focusing on this bit around closure. Our stakeholders in this, from the participant perspective, we wanted to ensure that there was a sense of accomplishment and a feeling of pride for participating in a clinical trial. We wanted to decrease the feeling of an abrupt sort of dismissal or an end. And we've gotten, feedback even from folks within our company who've participated in other sponsors' clinical trials, that when the study came to an end, it was just over. There was sort of no real goodbye, no thank you. It was, see ya. We'll see you at one of your follow-up visits. I think we felt that if you're going to be in a Pfizer study, it needed to feel like more than that, and we've done a tremendous amount to make sure that happens. And as an investigator and a coordinator, we wanted to increase the recognition and celebration of what that site was able to accomplish as part of this tremendous effort to evaluate the safety and efficacy of new medicines, and to decrease the burden on those sites and the abrupt ending of these sites, and increase the level of communication. I think that's the other thing, that sites really wanted to hear more from us about the status of our programs, how they were proceeding, and what role they played in them. So our thoughtful closure initiative, which really is a bounded, funded set of activities with a huge infrastructure that sits underneath it. And it may seem frivolous to talk about sending out thank you cards as part of what we do, but I think anyone who understands clinical research also understands how hard it is to be able to integrate that kind of work into the machine of clinical research when you have hundreds of sites and tens of thousands of patients in multiple languages in multiple countries. How do you ensure that we're doing this in ways that is repeatable, and that teams have all the resources that they need and the funding to be able to do this in a consistent way? And so we've built our program on a series of templates and capabilities that really are meant to enhance the sharing of our results, of our gratitude, and information about our clinical programs. And again, this is, we've got a bold move within Pfizer. We want to be the most patient-centric company in industry, and I think this work certainly takes us down that path. But again, this all starts with listening, and so we not just listening to participants, investigators, and site staff. CISCRP does their every 2 years their perception and insight survey, and it couldn't be more clear what it is that participants are interested in seeing. That almost 40% of them never heard back after a trial. About the results of the study. 61% of them didn't receive any reports or updates around the results. And almost 70% of those participants are interested in getting their study results. There was an article in Nature that was published several years back about how a simple thank you can improve clinical trials, around engaging participants in ways that make it feel like a meaningful enterprise to them, that they're not, that we stop calling them subjects. You'll never hear me refer to a human being ever in any talk that I give, referring to them as a subject. What that means to retain individuals in a clinical trial and why it's so important for them to stay invested in the work. And the perception and insight survey activity can be found on CISCRP's website. But again, this is very much in support of what we're doing. And so we've had pillars around our thoughtful closure initiative, and those are gratitude, acknowledging, and thanking for participation. And I will get to those logotypes shortly. Timely updates, proactively sharing milestones with clinical teams, making sure that they also feel a sense of gratitude from us, but are also being notified when press releases are coming out, when top-line results are being shared with investors and the street, because we've heard that it feels bad to work with a sponsor on a clinical trial that takes years, and that the top-line results of that study are announced to the public through the company's website, and they find out about it before investigators do, and that feels bad. And we've taken some drastic steps internally to make sure that no longer happens. And then lastly, around closing the loop, sharing back study results and data. And many of you probably know about the sharing of plain language study result summaries. We are doing that, and we've enhanced that work, and we're working with BMS and other companies on individual data return back to participants as well. And so our commitment to stakeholders is this, and this is the commitment that we make to ourselves, that every Pfizer study team thanks each and every participant for their clinical trial participation and provides them with timely study results. That's a commitment that we've made with this work. That Pfizer study teams thank each and every site for their contribution, that they're provided with timely updates and milestones along the way, and that our patient advocacy partners, who we rely on to help us design our clinical trials, that we also thank those advocacy groups for their contribution, and show what contribution they made when we're closing out our research. So I want to just very quickly talk about results and data, because I did speak about this at the Scope Summit this past year, and I have done in times in the past. But just to reiterate, the plain language study results summary is something that Pfizer has been a leader in. We have been providing these to study participants in our U.S.-based studies since 2015. These study results are meant for participants and the general public. They're written at a 6th to 8th grade reading level. They're written using health literacy and numeracy best practices for clear communication, and we translate them into multiple languages. The European Union is going to be requiring plain language summaries of study results for all studies conducted in the EU, and Pfizer is waiting. We're waiting for that requirement to go into place, and we will be producing them for every country for which our studies have been conducted. We had been posting these plain language study result summaries up on Pfizer Link, our participant portal. What we will be doing by the end of this year is posting all of these results up on Pfizer.com. So not only will they be available to participants, they'll also be available to the general public, and that's a recent announcement that we're able to make. We're also sharing the PLSRS with all of our investigator sites as well, to share those results, but also to make sure that if they want to send a copy to participants, if they happen to not download them through Pfizer.com or some other means, I think our goal is to make them as widely available as possible. And this is all fully integrated into our clinical study report process and our standard operating procedures at Pfizer. And then around our bilateral data exchange initiative, as I've spoken, in the past, Pfizer's been a leader in testing the boundaries of what we can return around data. Through the Blue Button initiative, we had started sharing, lab results and as routine labs and vitals as part of that activity, and we've expanded that work around a full initiative to return a full and complete data set of data that's been collected from clinical trial participants during the course of a clinical trial, and to return it to them at the end of the study in a complete set, but also where we can to provide unblinded clinical data back to participants during the trial as well. And this is a difficult thing because we can't always return everything back to a participant during the clinical trial, because we can't jeopardize the results of the study and the potential unblinding of the study. But it's our intention to maximally return data where it is that we can. And that's been our commitment, and we view that as our social contract. And maybe later on today, perhaps Hassan Kadim from Bristol Myers Squibb can maybe touch on the patient data access initiative, where Pfizer and BMS and other companies are working together to work on standards around data return and share the same principles around wanting to return data back to clinical trial participants. Our clinical data return roadmap is as follows, and these are, I think, represent a degree of difficulty as you move from top to bottom. But I think we have an aspirational goal around sharing all of these data types over the next few years, as we build out the capabilities to extract that data and return that data back to participants in a way that is contextual and meaningful. But I think the most important thing is that this data is the participants, and it will help them on their journey as they're trying to figure out their next set of treatment plans, and manage their care beyond their clinical trial participation. So I'd like to finish with gratitude, because I think that's always a good thing to do. So I shared some logotypes with you, and I think it's really just sort of putting it into practice. And if you looked at them quickly, you might have said, well, maybe I think I see the Pfizer ellipse in those logotypes, and you're probably right. And we based a lot of our gratitude, we based all of our gratitude in some respects on an innovative use of our Pfizer branding. And we worked with patients and patient advocates to develop language within our gratitude materials that were focused and meaningful and contextual to the types of clinical programs that we were running. So I just wanted to share some of those designs and principles with you as I come to the near the end of my time with you. We took the Pfizer logo. We've done some simple things with it, but I think they're beautiful and meaningful things. And we have language that I think comes from our heart, about one, being at the heart of research. We've created text blocks for every team to be able to choose what are the most meaningful language that can be used in these gratitude materials. And remember, these are being done for tens of thousands of people in multiple translations. We've allowed for the personalization of study team members in every one of these cards. So it is coming from all of us. So we've got it's coming from our heart. It's also around the concept of growth, helping us grow research, and what it means, as part of that. So you see our usage here. We're evolving medicine, and you'll see the logotype that we used here. Each one of these things, I think you'll see the language in each of the cards is different, and teams are given the flexibility to build their gratitude materials that are most in keeping with the patient population that they're interfacing with, and the kind of messaging that they want to share. And we're also looking at all of our patient populations, not just our adult populations. So this, I think, is a really, I think, a sweet way of acknowledging our pediatric patients, and we've done some fun things with gratitude as well. But underlying all of this, I think, is the message. I mean, the logos are cute, but the messages are important, and I think say what it is we want to say as a company to everyone who's part of this meaningful journey. I wanted to get us back on schedule, so I do have just a couple of last things, and then I'll take some questions. But meaningful closure, I think, as we've shown here, is more than thank you. And Doug had mentioned, I had presented before. It's already back 5 years ago that I presented to everyone. But this work is personal to me as well. This journey is not one that's an abstraction. For me, my father is a cancer survivor and Pfizer clinical trial participant and alumni. And he participated in a Pfizer clinical trial between 2005 and 2007. And his journey his journey continues. Both he and my mother are participating in a COVID-19 vaccination trial now as we speak. And I think his journey is going to continue as long as he wants it to. And this was just an article that we wrote about the return of study results to participants. So with that, I will end my talk there. And Doug, I'll turn it back to you if there's any questions from anyone.
For sure. So thank you so much, David. It's always good to speak to you and be able to connect you with people that can understand the value and the hard work of the initiatives that you're putting together. Pfizer is always a leader in these initiatives, especially starting with Project Blue Button and returning patient data. You really understand the importance of a partnership with participants. So a couple questions that I had read in the chat. There's a lot of really good questions, and we're not going to be able to get to all of these. A lot of people talking about how logical this is, and how hard it is to imagine that sharing these updates and the results isn't an automatic thing. So I understand it's an incredible challenge to do this globally for all the studies that you have. But one question that stood out to me was, have you developed thoughtful closure tactics to also include not just the cancer patients, but to the patient families? So obviously with cancer trials and patients regrettably worsening, they might not survive to see the end of the study. So what are you doing around that?
It's a great question, and we developed a series of templates doing specifically this, acknowledging caregivers and family members in these clinical trials, and some of whom will be predeceased by by their loved one. We have those. We have a plan for deployment on all of those. As you can imagine, it's difficult just in terms of getting those kinds of templates approved, and making sure that we've got a legal and regulatory framework around doing that. But it's within our roadmap, and we already have all of the content to do it. We're working on the approvals to be able to ensure that we can deploy them into the field.
Okay, that's fantastic. And along those same lines, moving forward. So just as we have a couple minutes left here, so try to be as brief as you can. But when you submit an informed consent to the site's IRB, do you include a post-trial communications plan so the study team member reviewing the informed consent with the patient can explain what will happen post-disease progression or withdrawal in terms of post-trial updates and study results to be received?
Yes, it's part and parcel of what it is that we do. Every one of our clinical protocols stipulates what we will do in terms of the return of results. In addition, the creation of our site facing materials and our participant facing materials, all of that content, including all of the gratitude materials, are all sent to the IRB as part of this overall package. So it's not being done as an afterthought. This is being done. This is being front loaded as part and parcel of how we're conducting our research for every study.
Fantastic. Well, there's some other questions, and feel free to connect with people who had asked you questions within the platform. Maybe you can connect with them or follow up directly with them. So along those lines, we're at our first break here. And during the break, you can click on the one-on-one networking tab that we have here on the left. And because we have it set up as a meetup, you're good to go. So it'll randomly match you with other attendees here. So feel free to meet new people. Connect with others. You can also set up scheduled 20-minute meetings for longer discussion throughout the day if you'd like to. But once again, David, thank you so much. Great to always have your perspective, and hope the COVID trials go well for you guys. And we're looking forward to seeing those results as soon as possible. So thank you so much. And everyone enjoy the break, and we'll be back at 10:45.